Hey everybody, what's going on? I just got through a pretty deep podcast um, about COVID and how important it is to be an American. And something was brought to my attention after we got done recording the podcast. The podcast, for one, will be on Shit Guys Need to Know. It's on iTunes and Google Play. It'll also be on the Dog Soldier Predator Hunters podcast. Um, this video uh, will be on Facebook. I'm not going to bogart this from anybody. I feel like it should be everywhere. This was a really deep podcast that needed to be listened. But we got to talking right after the podcast, and an important thing was brought to my attention. So this is going to make you feel obligated to listen to the podcast. This ain't about numbers to me. It ain't about subscribers. It ain't about selling shit. This is about being an American. You know, the World War II generation was deemed the greatest generation ever. Our generation now, our politicians now, our governments now, and maybe even some of these little bastards running around our streets and going to school right now would say they're the greatest generation ever. Entrepreneurship's cool. Everything's cool. Let's go make money. Let's be adults. Let's start a sock company that makes millions. This is the greatest generation ever. You're fucking wrong. The World War II generation, soldiers from the ages of 16 to 18 years old, fearless, knew that when that door dropped, that it was a coin flip if they were going to be able to take the next step. And then if they got that next step, they knew it was another coin flip if they got another step. Before long, you're in a 50-50 situation. But they went anyway to preserve our freedoms, to fight for the fucking world. So, while you're listening to this podcast, and while you're listening to other podcasts, and while you're running around doing this or doing that and think you're the greatest generation ever, maybe we should stop and look in the mirror and ask ourselves, and I'm going to do it too, are we really? Hey everybody, Steve Kreiner here. What's going on? And welcome to the podcast. Now, we're videoing this podcast and we're recording the audio on this podcast. And this is going to be an important podcast. It's going to be on the Dog Soldier podcast. It's going to be on Shit Guys Need to Know, obviously, because that's where you're at right now. And this is going to be live. Actually, not live, but the video portion will be on the Dog Soldier Predator Hunters app. Now, this podcast is a little different, and it's kind of sidetracked, and it's really not what I want to talk about a lot of the time, but it is something I think we need to talk about, and it's the fucking coronavirus. It's horrible. It's got the country in turmoil. It's got the world flipped upside fucking down, and I have a guest today that actually knows a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics, and actually makes fucking sense, and it all starts right now. Welcome to Shit Guys Need to Know, a podcast. Well, you guessed it, on Shit Guys Need to Know. We're going to talk to men and women in some cases and discuss all kinds of topics on, well, you got it, Shit Guys Need to Know. So sit back and relax. The most important podcast that you will listen to as a man starts now. Hey everybody, what's going on? I am sitting here playing the air guitar and the air drums. That's actually shitty music, but it gets me riled up because I love doing these podcasts. I love talking to you guys. I'm actually videoing this one because we are going to start videoing these and putting them on the Dog Soldier Predator Hunters app. Now, for the people out there listening to the Shit Guys Need to Know, I'm an outdoor television personality. I do my thing and make my living in the outdoor television industry, and I created Shit Guys Need to Know because I think it's important that as guys in this fucking country that we know important shit. So it's pretty well that simple. This podcast is brought to you by DogSoldierArmory.com, which is a brand of Dog Soldier, and it's just like CoyoteCalls.com. So if you're interested in predator hunting, you're interested in shooting, you're interested in all this kick-ass shit, DogSoldierArmory.com or CoyoteCalls.com. Also, this is brought to you by fucking common sense. What we're going to talk about today is something that I believe needs talked about. I've got rid of Facebook over this bullshit because everybody's got a fucking answer. Everybody's got a fucking solution. Everybody thinks they know what they're fucking talking about, and nobody knows absolute dick about what we're talking about. And I'm sorry, I'm cussing a lot right out of the gate, but this topic gets me pissed. Now, the guest we have today is a friend of mine, and I'm not going to tell you his full name. He comes from, let's just say he comes from a world unknown to people, and I want to keep it that way. The guy knows a lot of statistics. He knows a lot of facts, and he has a lot of good ideals, though politically, me and him actually may not agree sometimes. But that's what's good about this fucking country. Almost 1 million people have died to give us the freedom. And if people talk, this is a good example, because if people talk with each other exactly like me and Andy, yep, me and Andy's going to talk about on this podcast. So people need to pay attention, because we can actually go somewhere with this. So with that being said, Mr. R, how's it going, brother?
Going great, Steve. Great to be on with the Dog Soldier, talking about shit guys need to know, and this is definitely some shit that everybody needs to know and have a little better in-depth understanding of, rather than just these combative dialogues that have been taking place on social media, kind of dividing America rather than unifying us.
I actually got rid of Facebook. I didn't get rid of it because I have to keep it to run all my business pages, but I took it off my phone so I couldn't see Facebook. I get on there and check messages every now and then because there's a lot of fans from the outdoor world and a lot of business acquaintance from the outdoor world that we communicate that way. And but I took it off because everybody, I mean, you can see the division. And if it ain't racist bullshit, or if it ain't welfare bullshit, or if it ain't something, finally when things are kind of coming around, here we got the coronavirus pops up. And I don't really honestly know if it come from a fucking bat or a horse. All I know is it come from China. And that's all I know. But you know what's different between me and a lot of people on social media? I fucking admit that I'd have no clue what is going on with this country. I have a clue what's going on in the country, but I have no clue about the virus that is actually turning us upside down, and that's why you're here, man. And I think you got a lot of good stuff to say.
I think it's important that everybody understands that, I'm not even close to an expert, and that's the thing is, on social media you have a lot of people purporting to be experts that aren't. What I am fairly versed in is research and following science and looking at statistical data and understanding statistical variance and trying to apply that to my own knowledge. So what I say on here, a lot of these hard numbers are numbers you can find on your own. You can vet my information, on the CDC websites, on government websites. And some of my information I'm going to speak about will be, opinion based concerning the Constitution. But I think that's the conversation that we need to be having: is the coronavirus and the Constitution, not is the coronavirus real, and the combative, divisive tactics that are just ever present on Facebook. It's a tool that could be very connecting and can allow you to be in touch with people that maybe you would otherwise not be in touch with. But it's been turned into something, like you're saying, that it's all about division and who's right and who's wrong. And if you have a different opinion than I do, I got to hate you. I got to be a fan of my team. And like you noted, you and I don't see eye to eye on every political matter there is. And you and I could have some heated conversations about those things.
Yeah, probably so.
The difference between us and a lot of people are that we understand that those are the most intrinsic and important values interwoven into, our ideals as Americans in our Constitution. There's that idea that, we can't do it my way and we can't do it Steve's way. We have to do it the best way for the largest majority of people if we want to continue saying that we live in a democratic republic society.
Yep.
If we're going to make decisions based on a tiny percentage of people, then we need to change our government system because we're no longer working within the confines of a democratic republic system.
Just for purposes to prove our point, what Big R, what would you say? What would you say your political representation is? You Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, independent, crazy?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I hold true to the ideals of a number of our founding fathers that believe that political parties would be the demise of the Constitution that we, is largely regarded as one of the greatest political, if not the greatest political documents ever written.
Yep.
So I think, personally, I don't like to identify with any. I think that fandom, I love the Broncos and you love the Raiders, so we hate each other. That
Yeah.
it bleeds over into politics, and then there's no real dialogue that can take place that leads to progress. The only dialogue that takes place leads to division. So,
Gotcha.
I hate to say it, and people maybe don't want to hear this answer, but I think there are great conservative values in this country that could help govern this country the way it needs to be. And I think there are some liberal values that, are decent values. And sometimes we get confused because we don't understand our history or our government. And, we don't understand that, there have been, like, for instance, socialist aspects of our government since FDR was in office and did the New Deal and started protecting workers and making sure that we weren't, getting killed in coal mines and we were getting paid the right wages. And those are pretty important socialist aspects of a country, but there are also very dangerous aspects when you go that direction. There are dangerous aspects when you go to any fundamental end of a belief structure. So if you're going far right or far left, you're going to find some crazies on each end.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
We try to stick to the middle, or at least that's my political philosophy.
Yeah, no, I agree with most of that. It's here lately, especially actually right before all this virus deal. I'll be absolutely honest. I've been really disconnected politically for the last month or so, just because it's getting so fucking out of hand, especially with this virus and shit. And I don't think either party right now. I wouldn't say either party, but people on both sides of the fence have no interest in the betterment of our country. There are some people, not all the people, but I mean, there's people on both sides, Republican or Democrat, that I believe are losing their way. And but anyway, let's just so people listen to this, including myself, because I mean I've heard it all, but I'd like to hear it again. What is the coronavirus? What is the COVID-19, Big R?
So the coronavirus is an offshoot of the SARS, respiratory illness branch, if you will, of respiratory illnesses. And surprisingly, COVID-19 just basically breaks down to the coronavirus of 2019, which that in itself, to me, it rings some alarms in me because it sounds like, Windows 19 or Windows 20. Like,
yeah,
there is a patent on the coronavirus, believe it or not, patent number EP 3172319B1. I'll say that slower in case there are listeners that want to vet this. So patent number EP 3172319B1 was attained by the Pirbright Institution, and it's basically patented SARS. And so then any illness off of that branch of illnesses, along with any vaccine that is developed, belongs to that Pirbright company, which has many, many influential, ultra-rich donors. And this is all easily vetted. You can find this all yourself on their website, on the Bill and Melinda Gates website, as one of their major donors.
Why would this is a simple question. I got it in my fucking head to answer. Why would somebody patent a virus?
So I guess the benevolent reason to patent a virus would be to try to find ways to vaccinate against the virus, or possibly find ways to mitigate the virus's spread. All kinds of positive medical reasoning. the more diabolical reason I imagine to patent a virus would be to try to weaponize it. And
Gotcha.
you know, these are the things that are easy to find on government websites, these programs, but they still get kind of termed in this whole conspiracy theory coinage, which is actually a CIA term. There was no term conspiracy theory until the CIA made it up, and then the next term they came up with was debunking. So it sounds conspiracy theorist, but really we have many programs that try to weaponize, biological elements, even though it's against the Geneva Convention and many different maritime, wartime rules. All countries, including ourselves, are involved with trying to both cure disease and weaponize disease.
Well, I would think right now, if the fucking thing is patented, that right there explains a lot of things, and it should open the eyes of a lot of people. I mean, I had no clue about that. So,
see, and I didn't have any clue about it. I watched the video, and then, of course, I don't like to just listen to people. I like to vet information, so I went and vetted it the best I could and found all these patents. And then I started looking at the timeline, and I try not to let my conspiracy trigger go off too early, because I think people, we feed that with all of the new, with YouTube and everything. It's all out there, and it's kind of a craze. But when you start looking at the timeline, then you start to say, okay, so the Pirbright Institution got a patent for the vaccine associated with coronavirus in November of 2019. Coincidentally, the same month that this thing breaks out, supposedly of a lab in Wuhan, which again, there's all kinds of stories. I don't know much on the origin of this particular branch of the SARS virus, this coronavirus, but I do know that it came on the world scene in the same month that the Pirbright Institution got the patent for the ability to make a vaccine for
imagine
it.
that.
Alarm whistles definitely start going off in my research background when I see things like that.
Yeah, it kind of like it's like if somebody comes out with something cool on accident, and like right now we're working with a product. I work for Axion Optics, and we have a product called Second Zero, which at the flip of a switch, it flips down a prism in front of your scope, and it changes the POI 11.5 MOA, patent pending, and then Nightforce steals it. So it's kind of the same thing. It's
Right.
almost, and when this was patented. The patent went through the same month this pops up.
Right. So the original patent license, I believe, was applied for in 2008 or 2009, and that patent for the actual coronavirus came through, I believe, in 2016. But then, in addition to it, which is you can just scroll down. It's very close to the top. All this stuff was a lot easier for me to find than I thought. There's a little addendum to the patent that says basically they own all the rights to any vaccine associated with said SARS viruses.
So
And that came through in November of 2019, if I understand my information correctly, the same month that the coronavirus came on the world scene, and coincidentally we have White House officials, doctors saying, well, it's going to take us years to have the vaccine. We haven't even thought about it yet. A company in our own it's a European country that's funded by a lot of people that live in America, has a patent for this particular vaccine that supposedly we haven't thought about at all. So things start to stack up, and I hate to go down that rabbit hole too far, to be honest with you, because I think people get a little bit squishy on it, but the numbers are where the real meat of the thing is, and where the real question lies. I think we get stuck on this question of whether or not this is a conspiracy or if it's real or not. I mean, people get very heated and very violent, almost even over, you don't believe it's real. So I want to make clear, this is obviously real.
Yes.
It's obviously killing people. making people sick. If your family has been affected by this, my heart goes out to you, because medical bankruptcy is real. Even if you come off of a ventilator or something, you're going to have lasting effects physically and economically
Financially,
from
yeah.
that. 100%. So there's a real heartfelt, emotional feeling for people out there that are dealing with this. It's definitely a real thing.
Do you?
The question
Or
is,
go ahead. Sorry.
do the numbers add up? Do the fatality statistics for the population at large justify the restrictive measures placed on our citizenship by our government, many of which are absolutely unconstitutional if you really understand it?
Yeah,
The Constitution.
and before we move further on, I have a question. I think it's valid. First of all, well, it's a two-part question. Well, I think you answered why it would be, but my question would be, well, I guess my first question, I got two questions. This is easily vetted, right? Let's just get that
Yes.
clear. Okay, so
Yes.
for everybody listening on iTunes or Google Play or listening to the app, Big R here is telling us things that are easily vetted. He knows me very well. I know him very well. He knows I am going to vet this shit. I'm gonna air it, but I'm going to vet it. But my next question is, so that one's answered easily. You guys get off your lazy asses if you think this is bullshit and go vet it yourself. Second of all, my question, why, Big R, what's your theory? This would probably be a theory, or maybe you know it. Why would the United States, I assume it's the United States Patent Office, right? Is
Yep.
that okay? Why would they let a fucking company, and everybody listen to this right now before I get pissed off and lose my fucking rocker and start throwing shit, because this does piss me off. It costs a lots of money to patent a product that actually helps people, actually to be able to sell a product without some fucking jack-off company stealing it. Why would the United States government, Big R, allow a company to patent a virus that could absolutely tear the world to pieces? Why? Do you have a theory or even an answer?
Well, I'll tell you, money, greed. So if this is almost a whole different podcast, but if you go back, once Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act, we basically handed over our country to banking interests, which would mean, high-level industrial elite interests. And ever since then, we've had a real struggle with, big money controlling politics. And the biggest money in this country right now is likely in the pharmaceutical industry.
Why is nobody asking these questions that I'm a bonehead hillbilly from the South? Why? And immediately I find out one fact that I do note to everybody listening is easily vetted. And my whole attitude just changed. Like, you've changed my life, Big R, 100% when it comes to COVID. And we're on 20 minutes and 42 seconds right now, and I'm so fucking pissed off because this is a easily vetted fact, or your ass wouldn't be on here telling me, because I know you very well and you know me very well, and I know you're not going to be spewing bullshit. And if people want to vet it at home, they can.
Yep.
Why is nobody talking about the fact that this shit is patented by the United fucking States of America Patent Office? Why is nobody asking this question?
Well, and again, another real scary part of what's going on in our country right now, Steve, is that, something like 60 to 70% of our mainstream media is owned by 4 or 5 different money interests, through a number of different corporations and shell companies. These guys are extraordinarily intelligent at subverting constitutional law and finding loopholes in order to basically dominate industries. The last time we broke up a monopoly, was almost 20 years ago, and we acted like they're all just on the up and up now.
Yeah.
But the fact is that the media we get fed to us is catered to what they want, and they're damn sure not going to show us that, if you go look at the records of senators and congressmen, 60% plus will have stock shares in pharmaceutical companies. And then you stop wondering why we're okay with voting for, to mass prescribe opioids and start a heroin epidemic in this country like we did through the 90s. We're dealing with the heroin epidemic now. This is because big money interests control our politics through lobby groups, and this idea that we, the common American, have any real say in what goes on in this country, or have since like the 70s, is pretty ridiculous if you follow the money and you follow the history. And it's scary. And the only reason I'm not getting as pissed off as you is because this is what I do. I mean, you can ask anybody that knows us both. I've been down this rabbit hole for a while, and I'm to the point. I'm definitely pissed off, but I'm trying to be calm to get my point across, and hopefully people will listen and start waking up, and real Americans will remember that it was 1% of people who were saying, "Fuck King George. You don't get to tell me shit." All right, that's American spirit. Is the minority standing with their feet in the ground, listening to everybody else tell them to shut up because they're scared, but being a real patriot. And we need real patriots to wake the fuck up and start vetting this stuff instead of watching Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, because they're paid for by the same interests.
I agree with that. It is amazing to me the way that our mainstream media is going right now. I can't stand to listen to Fox News. I can't stand to listen to MSNBC or whatever it is, or CBS or NBC. I can't listen to shit right now. I can barely talk to people about this shit right now because we have a mutual friend. He's my best friend. He's like my brother, and he'll tell you, I get fucking livid mad, and when my switch flips, I cannot control. Well, you've seen that. Like when our president, we have mainstream media reporters arguing with the president of the United States. Now, if Obama, I think, in my personal opinion, was a horrible thing to happen in this country, started a huge race war, started a huge change that just unfolded, and we won't get into that right now, but I would have never stood. Matter of fact, I would have shook his hand, and I would have respected him. Even though I thought he was a bonehead, I would have respected. Now we have the mainstream media, they feel like, on both sides of the fence, feels like it's their job. Like everybody's an investigative reporter right now, and they have balls enough to tell the president he's lying. And I don't mind that if he was or if he wasn't. But to sit and argue and then it's so apparent for a guy like me that is mildly educated on this. I'm not a huge political person. I know what it's like to be a 3%er. I know what it's like to be a patriot. I know what it's like to feel like I would fight for this country on our soil. Obviously, I'm not a veteran. I'm not a hero. I didn't do nothing, but I am a 3%er. And that's why you're on here today. And I don't understand why more people ain't talking about. Like, I almost can't believe that we're doing, like, I'm hearing this shit on my podcast. This is something that should be, like, I hope I reach enough people to make this count, I guess.
That's the major hope that I have, is that we're able to reach enough people that they start hearing it and start understanding that rather than being a Republican or a Democrat, be a constitutionalist.
Absolutely.
The Constitution gives us our power, and it gives us our laws. No man, no woman in this country does that. They'll try everything in their power to manipulate you to think that they are the ones that the power resides in. But the power in this country resides in the people, and it was given to us by the Constitution, and it's right there in the Bill of Rights. And it's easy to see. Everybody talks about the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. The 10th Amendment might be the most telling amendment in the Constitution, and this is what people need to remember. That this is why I don't really care for political parties. I'm going to read the 10th Amendment.
Okay.
And I feel like it's fairly self-explanatory, and I think a lot of the Constitution is, even though a lot of people like to say that, they spoke so different back then, we can't understand it. That, that's how they try to get our guns.
And hold that thought real quick. I just want to tell everybody out there, whether you're listening to iTunes, Google Play, you're listening to the app, or you're seeing this on the Dog Soldier Facebook fan page. The other day I was presented a pocket constitution by the Women Republican Party of Washakie County right here in Wyoming, and I thought that was the coolest shit ever. So I will very soon, and I was going to do it until this COVID thing happened because everything shut down. The shipping ain't, the manufacturing, nothing's right now. We will have pocket constitutions available at Dog Soldier Armory very soon at my cost. So
nice work, Steve. So Amendment 10 in the Bill of Rights states, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. What that means, for anybody wondering, is that if it is not explicitly stated in the Constitution, the only power to write a law that supersedes that constitutional right resides in the people, in states' rights, and in the people's power. Meaning, for instance, a governor can get on TV all he wants until he is blue in the face, and he can say, we have a stay-at-home order. That is literally a guideline, people. That is like a pirate's code. It is not a law. Even if they tried to make it a law, it would be unconstitutional. And that is why, for instance, the Brighton Police Department, maybe a month ago now, had to issue a formal public apology for arresting, yes, an ex-police officer for playing catch with his daughter in the park.
Yep.
They had to issue a formal public apology for, quote-unquote, overreach of authority, because much of what is going on in our country right now is a blatant overreach of authority. They do not have the power. You have to literally change the Constitution by the amendment process to try to tell any America where they can stand on a sidewalk, that they can't come out of their house, that you have to wear a mask to buy food. That's hindering their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yep.
If you tell a person you can't come in here to buy food unless you wear a mask, that is not constitutionally, it has no constitutional teeth. No one in this country has the authority to tell you you cannot eat unless you wear this certain thing into our store.
With that,
this is America.
So with that being said, everybody knows I own a bar and grill, and I fight this all the time. People are like, it's unconstitutional. Why don't you just open the doors? And I'm always saying we're not as free as we think we are, because
100%.
With the health license that we have from the state of Wyoming, and just like every other fucking place in America has a health license from the state, in Wyoming, the liquor board actually owns the liquor distributorship. When guidelines, they just, I don't know what they call them, the amendments or whatever, they let the counties decide the guidelines and everything like this.
Right.
It might not be legal, but they can pull my license in 2 seconds.
100%.
And
that's where, yep.
Because a business entity is not a citizenship, and that's what I try to tell people. They can't keep me from e-commerce. They can't keep me from commerce. They can't keep me from serving people. They can't keep me from making money. But when a license is involved, and this is for everybody hopefully listening that flips me shit all the time, because I'm the most patriotic motherfucker you'll ever meet, but I can't just open my door and say, come on in, because I'm governed. That license takes my freedom away, just like a driver's license.
Right. And here's the sad part about that, Steve, is bureaucratic politics and red tape like that over the last 100 years has managed to basically browbeat America into compliance with things that are absolutely unconstitutional, and if taken all the way to the Supreme Court, would likely be overturned. The problem is that even our American justice system is a monetary-based system. They know most small business owners do not have the financial means to fight
it.
The government of the United States of America all the way to the Supreme Court just to make a point, right?
Yeah.
So then everybody just says, okay, I got to do what they tell me. And so through money and here
Yes.
that is extraordinarily hard to untangle in those terms.
And for everybody, hopefully local, that's listening to this, this gives me a great opportunity to explain why. So right now at the Coyote, we are not opening inside. Because if you want to feel like you're eating at a fucking Nazi camp, then you can come in. Because legally, with my license, I've lost my freedom. Legally, with that license, I am governed by the fucking health department of Washakie County. If I allow someone in my place, they don't have to have a mask, but I have to have a mask. And I have to have all this other bullshit, bureaucratic bullshit. And then, so we open the patio. So what this means is everybody can come. We got to really express that they do social distancing, but most of the time it's family and friends, so they don't give a shit. You know, half of them are slobbering on each other. But I chose to give up my freedom for what freedom I have in the food business. I wear a mask and I serve these people on my patio. I refuse to let people in my restaurant or bar and grill right now for the simple fact it is so unconstitutional. It's embarrassing, but I cannot fucking fight it. But I have chosen to make the best I can make out of it as we get through this together. Fighting the government, I agree, is not an option for any small business in the United States of America. Fighting the government, fighting the county health department, yeah, you can call and bitch and you can get things swayed, but you cannot fight a court battle over something that's going to end in 2 weeks probably. You know, the 15th, the governor issues a new order. But, you know, I get all these people, why don't you stand up? Why don't you do your patriotic obligation? I fucking can't. If people...
Tell them to pitch in. Tell them to put the hat on the corner and, you know, throw their money in the pot, and we'll go to war with the government.
And you know what? I have a good bit of ranchers that have been on the patio here lately. Says if I get in any trouble, they'll take care of it. I will tell you one thing. I had this asshole on my patio the other day, and if he's ever listening to this, he probably won't be, but if he ever listens to this, he'll know who I'm talking about. This motherfucker pointed at me in my face and said, "You need to just open up and fuck this bullshit." And I pointed back at him and I said, "Motherfucker, when you quit being a fucking bum drunk and you start paying my bills, then you can open this son of a bitch. Because I got more riding on this than my stubborn fucking head." That's like I tell everybody. I'm a big gun rights advocate. I'm in the business. We're patriots. But it'll never happen, especially in Washakie County, but it'll never happen, period. This is not ever going to happen. But if the cops show up at my front door and say, "We need your guns, Steve," I'm going to give them my fucking guns. Just for the simple fact, even though it's unconstitutional, and even though I lost this battle at my front porch, there's an organization somewhere that is getting ready to fight this said situation, and I can't stand when I hear people say, "Pry them fucking guns out of my dead hands." What good are you going to do dying in front of your kids and your wife on the front fucking porch?
Right.
I mean, so there's just certain things we can't fight.
Well, we can, but like you said,
but not like that.
You know, how do we fight this? Well, the courts don't seem like the right way.
No, absolutely
and
not.
Be real. Even though you and I will throw down and bleed for this country and die for our peeps and our freedoms, our liberties, this second, I know you well enough to know that. We're not afraid to do that. Violence has to be the last option, and the older that I get, the more I really see that. You know, I might have been a heathen in my youth, running around having fun, but you know, hurting people doesn't solve a whole lot. What we can do is we can do what we're doing right now, and we can try to educate people the best we can. We can try to get the word out. We can try to, at least, if nothing else, spark curiosity so that they will stop reading sensationalized headlines and not even opening the article to see if the article even talks about the same shit.
Yeah.
I need them to start looking for real information, get off of these mainstream media, you know, platforms, because like you said with these reporters, they're just entertainers. This is not news anymore. This is mass media entertainment. They are public figures. They're celebrities. They're basically reality TV stars. So
Absolutely.
I'm not interested in anything they have to say other than just to see what they're trying to feed the American people. We got to find real information, learn how to research the right way, find reliable sites, and get these people actually asking, like, what in the world is going on here? Because we're not, like you stated basically when you sign that contract or that for the health inspector, you're giving up certain liberties. That statement in and of itself is un-American, and we do it because we have to, and people need to make a living. And it happened before we were even born, this changeover to where we started trading things for our liberty. But, Thomas Jefferson said it best, any person willing to trade their liberty for security deserves neither. So we got to start understanding that we shouldn't be trading anything for our liberty. Those are they're God-given. They're unalienable. No one gets to give them or take them away. You don't trade them for shit. You shouldn't be put in that position. And this is how we start to try to wake people up and see if there is any way to come back from this and figure out that we need leaders leading this country, not fucking politicians. We haven't had a leader, an actual leader who has led men or women into battle and understands like what real hard decisions
what we're
are
fighting
for a long-ass time.
What we're fighting for.
Right. We've had, Eisenhower, Kennedy, since then it's basically been stooges, politicians, people that you and I would never follow into a firefight, never follow into a burning building, I wouldn't even want to go on a hunting trip with most of these guys, Steve.
Yeah.
And we're letting them make decisions that affect our families. This is silly. It's lunacy. And everybody needs to wake up and stop letting these assholes make their decisions for us because they don't know us.
Yeah.
They're the elite. They're not the common man.
Yeah, no, you're right. And for people watching and listening, I hope you really take advantage of what you're witnessing right now. And I hope you take advantage of what you're hearing right now. And I hope this gets you guys fired up. And I hope this gets you guys pointed in the right direction and do these things. If you guys see in my background, I have one flag hung right here, and it was presented to my brother, Mike Dante, when he got out of the service. He did 2 or 3 tours. 3 tours. And then this one was flown at Ground Zero in honor of me by Will Jimeno, one of the only 2 motherfuckers that was dug out of the rubble of 9/11. This flag right here. And then this flag, Mike Dante. And the flag above it, that's my grandfather. My grandfather was a veteran. But none of that means shit except that red, white, and blue and what we should, and keyword should, stand for as Americans. We're all guilty of leniency. We're all guilty of slack. We're all guilty of not paying attention to the big picture. I understand that, and we all are limited. But if you do some of these simple things like vetting and find the information and spread the information when you understand it and do it in such a way, me and Andy look at things different sometimes, but we're having a great conversation right now, and we're on the same side because we both understand the importance of being a fucking American. That's the important
100%.
thing. That's the important thing, and that's
the only thing.
And that's what I want. Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do this podcast for. We talk about Corona and we talk about this and talk about that, but I knew this podcast would get people fired up, and I hope to God I don't give 2 shits if I ever sell another coyote call again. I don't give 2 shits if I ever sell another rifle again. If this video or this podcast goes viral just because of the importance that you guys are hearing right now, and just because of the importance of what we're trying to tell you, I swear to God I would give up everything. I have a bar and grill. People can't drink. People can't give up drinking. They're going to drink and they're going to eat the best fucking burgers you can get and eat the best steak. So whatever. I will give up a lot of shit that I don't have to have because there's one fucking thing I want, and there's one thing I have to have as an American, is to be able to wake up in the morning and look outside and know that I'm free and I know where I want to be. And right now, we are not free and we are not where we want to be as Americans. And
no,
we need to get there.
100%. If you're afraid to walk outside, if you're afraid to speak your mind in this country and voice a minority opinion, we are no longer living in America. In this world where everyone's afraid to say anything that is contradictory.
Yep.
We live in this social media shaming age where soccer moms can shame everyone into just agreeing with them.
Yep.
And we have to get over that. Freedom, liberty requires vigilance, not laziness, not this bullshit where we post some sensationalized headline because it caters to my worldview and will convince people I'm right. But actually being vigilant and getting to the bottom of these numbers instead of listening to talking heads tell me that this thing is bad enough we need to give up our freedoms. That vigilance is required to be an American, and a lot of us have forgotten that, and we need to wake up and stick our feet in the ground if we want to continue being the America that was founded. Because right now, like you just stated, we are not that America. That's a really unpopular thing to say, but we are absolutely not the America that our founding fathers envisioned. So all these people running around screaming America and then, complying, and it's one thing to comply, Steve, like what you're doing, a lot of Americans have to do, and I know it bothers you to not open your business, your place of business.
It
right?
sucks.
But you don't have to do that quietly. And that's why I like you, because you may. It's important to be a law-abiding American. We can't have a lawless civilization either.
Yes,
and
I
so
agree.
You're striking a nice balance between being a rebel and being a 3%er and also being a law-abiding citizen, because if we achieve our goals in reminding people and getting America back lawlessly, it would feel pointless to me.
Yeah, and it is, and that's what I tell people. This year, and I'll say their name out loud. They may fire, or they've already fired me. They may sue my ass. But Winchester Repeating Arms fired me in 2019 because I got into it with a Greenpeace group out of Spain, and I simply flipped them off with bloody hands and said, "This means fuck off, American." And I learned my lesson right there. I learned that it can really hurt financially. But what I did learn is I felt so good when I woke up the next day, because me and my partner, Bill, we already had a plan. We were already in the gun business within 24 hours building our own rifles. And that's what still is the great part of the United States of America. We can move past this. We can get past this. We can take the next step. But we can be vigilant. But like Big R said, we don't want to be lawless about it. I would like to say I'm a good politician, but I have no knowledge whatsoever of politics, but I have a very good way of getting the point across. I have a very good way of saying what I want to say, but I am a law-abiding citizen, because I think that's more important than standing out on the street and saying, we're open, and if you come and try to close me, I'm going to shoot you. Or if you come and try to close me, we're going to have pitchforks and stakes, and we're going to fight back. That's really not what we're trying to tell you guys to do right now. The voice.
No, that just creates a ultimatum.
But we have a voice.
There's
We have a voice, and we have a voice, and that's why. Sometimes when I'm mouthy, and sometimes it seems like I'm coming off across mouthy or arrogant or just stirring up shit, but people don't understand when you reach over 1 million people a year, sometimes you're actually obligated, especially for what I stand for, to speak up and say things that might cost me money, and it might cost me customers. But you know what? People might get mad at me because I ain't opening my bar and grill and letting them come in, but we're going to get through this. Because we're an Americans, and we have a chance to make it better. I believe,
right.
I really believe this.
We have to have that mentality in order for it to change for the positive, and not just be some type of anarchy that breaks loose. Because there's a lot of great rebellious sentiment out there, and there's a lot of just rebellious sentiment, just people want to be pissed and they want to break stuff. And so there's a balance in there, and we got to be more intelligent, about those things.
Yeah,
we got to start caring about, like you said. Well, I thought about it before I got on today. A lot of people do these things. I watched a debunk video the other day about, somebody sent me the Plandemic. I watched that. It's it requires some vetting and it's got a little bit of crazy wafting off it or whatever. And then I watch a debunk video somebody else sent me of the pandemic video, and that guy, immediately you can tell he's bought and paid for to debunk stuff.
Yeah.
And, at the end of it, after he goes on this rant because he cares so much about, America, he's got to get this out. And then if you like, share, subscribe. I don't care about that other than for you. Like,
I don't
for
care
us
if
to reach
anybody.
more
I don't care
need-
if anybody
I don't,
subscribes. I just need
want
them
to
to hear
reach
this.
people. I want people to wake up. I don't, like that's why we talked about before, and me just kind of trying to be anonymous here. This is not about who I am. This is about who you are. This is about who we are.
Yep.
This is about being American and trying to be an individual and doing your own research and having your own damn ideas. Because this whole collective hive mind bullshit, where we just let the media tell us what to do and then we walk lockstep like Nazis down the street, it ain't working for me.
No.
Well, we're supposed to be free thinkers. Be a free thinker. I'm not giving you ideas. I'm not trying to make you think anyway. I'm giving you statistics that you can vet. I mean, we haven't gotten into some of the numbers, but the patent and things, you can do this on your own, people. It's up to you as an American, as a free thinker, as just a human being, to educate yourself and try to do your best to educate others. And
That's probably the only positive thing. Probably the only
it comes from speaking to them.
Yeah, probably the only positive thing that is coming from this COVID deal is the simple fact that hopefully people wake up and start finding out the real deal,
Yeah, start doing your own research, and that's, you and I, this has been great, and I think we're talking about a lot of great things, but before we get too far, I want to make sure people know we have the numbers here, and really the question that we have to start asking ourselves as Americans, because I've charted the math out, all right, and the death statistics in this country have went way up. And they've admitted openly in articles in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and on videos that yes, they're cooking the books. They're putting COVID down as a contributing factor to like the heart attack death if quote unquote they may have exhibited symptoms associated with COVID. And this is not a cover up. The articles in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal aren't exposés trying to expose corruption. They're just flat telling the American people, yeah, we're changing death certificates, and they're acting like that's a normal thing when it's utterly unprecedented in our country. Never before have they put this person died of a heart attack, but they had symptoms that may have been related to the strep throat, so we're putting strep as a contributing factor to the death, right? But these hospitals are getting funding, much more funding for a COVID-related death than like a heart attack or a COPD or a heart disease death, all right? So the numbers have went up, and even if you calculate using the highest number statistics we have, and you chart that out over a year, we're looking at like 300 to 350,000 deaths in America because of COVID, which does sound like a very high number to most people, but when you do the math, that's 0.09% of the population at large. All right, that's not even a tenth of a percent of the population at large. So the only question I want people to ask themselves is, even if let's inflate their numbers even more. We'll do the cooking of the books for them, and let's say that 1% of Americans die over the course of a year because of this virus. Is that worth giving up liberties? Is that justification for the restrictive measures taken by our government to supposedly contain this virus? For my money, it's not at all. I'm not going to trade my liberty for anything.
Yep.
I want to be free. I'm not going to hide under my covers from the monsters in the closet so that I can die of old age before I die of something else. Last I checked, dying's one of the hazards of living. And I don't want it for anybody. I don't want the suffering for any family member. I have family members that are part of the at-risk population, the immunocompromised population. And if you think I'm not afraid for those family members, you're sorely mistaken. But if you think I'm going to allow fear to dictate my decision-making, you're very mistaken as well, because that's not an American value. Yeah. Right? We did not gain our independence from England from hiding under the covers from the monsters in our closet. We did it by kicking their fucking door down.
Yeah. And I've been on every side of the fence of this Corona deal just because I didn't understand it, and I don't know the numbers. Yeah, at first I was like, yeah, it's bullshit, blah 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 blah. And I noticed, I'm sanitizing more, washing my hands more, yada yada yada. And then, well, you probably knew Lauren. Emily had an acquaintance, a friend, um, that had died from it, and you know, then I'm like, shit, this is serious. So then I'm like, oh my god, this shit is fucking for real. But I wasn't wanting to give up my liberties for it. I just kind of thought, if you're at risk, you should stay the fuck at home. If you're scared
That's
of getting it.
historically, that's how we've always dealt with pandemic: is the
Yeah,
at-risk population and the sick
stay
population
at
get
home.
quarantined.
And now they're
Yeah, not
shutting down businesses and shit. I'm just like, what in the Sam fuck? I
well, and that's the other thing that ties into this, to the numbers, like the raw statistics. Again, any of you people listening, you can look it up. CDC website. You can look these numbers up. You can do the math yourself. If I screwed the math up, feel free to light me up. I mean, I'm a big boy. I got thick skin. I kind of doubt I messed the numbers up, but they're there for you to look at. And the other thing is that medical science varies widely on how these measures that we're taking. There's a vast contingent. You could find journal-based, peer-reviewed, case-based studies to support both sides of this fence, and that's the tough part. So there are doctors that say that flattening the curve, shelter in place and all the things we've been doing. There's also a school of thought that says you flatten the curve of a respiratory illness by keeping everything open and developing herd immunity. So there's a medical science approach that would say that shutting down schools, for instance, is the last thing you want to do, because those hardy little snot-nosed school children
yeah
are the ones that help us develop our herd immunity.
yeah.
And by sequestering them, you could actually be putting your children at higher risk, because you're diminishing their immune system, keeping them inside and away from all the germs that we need to have.
I was
The same goes
listening.
for the face mask.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast. I think it was Joe Rogan had a doctor on there when this shit first started, and the guy was like, this is very serious and this is that. And, things changed within 2 weeks of that guy talking about, some shit happened that he said would happen. Some shit happened that he said wouldn't happen. I mean, it is a very evolving, serious virus, but he did make a valid point. We closed schools all over the country and they're fucked. Because we all know how heat and air conditioning works if you got central heating and air, and just like the cruise ship, just like the U.S. Navy ship, just like schools, when we do let these kids go back to school, and God forbid something happens, and they got if they're in San Fernando, California, and it's hotter than a motherfucker there in the wintertime, they turn on that air conditioning. They've distributed that to every kid in that network of ducks, I guess. And
Right.
I agree with that. And I learned that a long time ago. I tried to soak up and I tried to understand what he was talking about, and I really didn't, because then we didn't have no numbers. It was all speculation. And
Right.
but that is one valid point he brought up. I mean, because no matter how bad or how good this gets, taking our kids out of school is the wrong way.
Right, and that's what I read. One of the most telling articles is, I've seen both sides of this, but was the longtime head of biostatistics and epidemiology at the University of Harvard. And he basically said, no matter what measures you take as a society, it is impossible to stop the spread of a respiratory illness between
Yep.
family members, neighbors. Like, it doesn't matter if you try your hardest, that respiratory illness is going to spread through society.
Yep.
So his point was, sheltering in place is all that's going to do is elongate the curve. It's
And
not
it
going to
is
flatten it.
airborne, right? Correct? I mean, it is an airborne
100%
virus.
airborne. Yep. So his thought process is that it's impossible to regulate the transmission of the virus. The best thing you can do is get it transmitted about as quickly as possible and develop herd immunity, and it'll pass over faster. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have less deaths,
Yeah.
and honestly, I'll come right out and say it likely would mean we're going to have more deaths.
Yep.
The problem with a lot of Americans is the media is very crafty, and they show you a number like 300,000, and that is a big number to most Americans.
Yeah.
But when you understand medical research or statistical research variance, and you start looking at percentages, and you start understanding, okay, this percentage, this 0.09% of the population at large that may die from this virus, that could go up or down by 5 to 10%. We don't know which. That's a statistical variance. By the time a year's gone by, it might be 5 to 10% higher. But that is still a fractional number, and it still doesn't even put us close to the 1% threshold.
Yeah.
Right? So the fear-mongering tactics of the media are brilliant, right? They throw a huge number out to most Americans, and that's the end of their story. They're scared now, and they're going to do what they tell them. Some of us that are more curious, we go look and say, what the hell? I've coached football before, right? And you got to think, when I have a kid that comes to me and tells me he wants to play in the NFL, right? 0.05% of people who ever strap on pads will ever get paid real money to play professionally.
Yeah.
So you have an obligation as a coach to sit that kid down and explain to him the statistical anomaly that it would take, how difficult, that it is nearly a miracle. Like he could do it, but not only will he have to bust his ass and get good grades and, always be on the grind, he's going to have to get lucky too. And we're obligated to have that conversation. But now a 0.09%, which is, the same number in statistics as 0.05%, essentially. It's such a negligible difference. And I'm supposed to shelter in place because of that threat. I tell one kid, he probably will never, it's not even possible. It's like getting struck by lightning for him to go pro in football. But for the same statistical variance, I tell the rest of the American people, we got to hide from this thing.
Yeah, and
it makes no sense.
And I do want to point out to everybody listening, if God forbid one of my family members contracts this and dies, it would devastate me. But I do agree with what Big R is saying, and it sucks. It just fucking sucks. I don't know what else I can say about it. We can hide from a lot of shit, but, this shit's like Freddy Krueger. This shit's like Freddy Krueger. If your ass goes to sleep, you're fucked. Well, you just got to, man. I agree with doing our part to keep it from spreading, and I agree with doing our part to make it as easy as possible and to get through this. But my big question, are we doing anything? That's the question.
That's the follow-up right there. So then you ask yourself, okay, so do these restrictive measures placed on society that absolutely trample our constitutional liberties, are they justified by these numbers? So are the things we're doing, are they mitigating the spread of this thing? So I started wondering, right? So everybody on social media, and again, my numbers that I'm about to give you right now, the ones I gave you on the 0.09%, that's today. That's current to today, right? The ones I'm going to give you right now, it's been maybe a couple weeks since I put all this together. So it could vary a little bit. But for instance, on social media, everybody was shaming Iowa because they hadn't took any restrictive measures. States all around them had, and other states that had similar populations. So I took down Wyoming's population, the number of cases, the number of deaths, Iowa's, and then I did Connecticut, Mississippi, and Utah, because they all have similar populations, and they're all in different regions of the country. I thought it would be a real good baseline to try to figure out, does the sheltering in place and wearing masks, do these things really flatten the curve? What do the numbers say? So Iowa, with 3 million people, had 0.19% of their people had been infected, all right, and 0.0041% of their population at large was dying from the coronavirus.
Okay.
The numbers for Mississippi and Utah for infections, they had lockdowns on their society, very similar population to statistics, 0.17% and 0.15% of their population infected with coronavirus, opposed to the 0.19% from Iowa.
So point
So yes,
two or
Iowa's
3.02.
right. Iowa's was, they had a higher percentage of their population infected, but as far as statistical variance goes, very negligible, very small. All right, and the death numbers the same. Actually, Mississippi had a tiny bit of a higher percentage of their state that had died. The one thing I found that was crazy in there, Connecticut, same population as Iowa, massive restrictive measures. It's in that whole, obviously, New York was hit hard too. They had a 0.84% of their population infected.
Yep.
They did everything they were supposed to do. They locked it down, but because that population is so dense in that northern seaboard, over there, northeast seaboard, you're going to have a higher level of people that are infected. But again, the death statistic numbers, even though Connecticut had a statistically significant, I guess you could say, more of their people infected, they had the exact same or close to the number of Mississippi as deaths.
Yeah.
So these numbers, the point is, these numbers are very negligible. Iowa didn't do any restrictive measures, and they don't have a statistically higher number that's worth even mentioning of infections or deaths. Even though they have 3 million people in their state and they didn't do anything to lock it down, their numbers are even very similar to our numbers. The most sparsely populated state in the country, with lockdown measures in place, and our numbers are not that much lower than Iowa's numbers with 3 million people in no lockdown measures.
What is have you ever, just out of curiosity real quick, have you ever I understand people need to eat and groceries, and they probably deflated the balloon of mass chaos, but do you think they ever took in consideration the 600 fucking people walking around the grocery store in middle of Wyoming in the wintertime when the fucking heat's on?
100%. So yes, we will. That is absolutely one of the next things I was going to get into, because I, work in that industry. So I've been able to see on the front lines all of what I like to term as cognitive dissonance. For instance, apparently people can't go to church because that's too dangerous, but everybody can go to Walmart.
Yeah.
Everybody can go to Home Depot. Everybody can go to the grocery store, and most of them not wearing masks, not doing the things that we're supposedly supposed to do. That's okay, but we're going to shut down churches, which is, again, no matter what side of religiosity you stand on, that goes 100% against the Constitution. People have the right to assemble, and they have the right to worship whatever they want to do.
Go ahead, sorry.
Well, I just say, when you start telling people that they can't assemble, that they'll get citations, they'll get possibly arrested for that, but you can go be in a crowded store. There's not a whole ton of logic tied in those two statements.
The only thing I've seen American out of this whole fucking deal is you can buy guns through the drive-thru now.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's 100%. Have you noticed that too? That it almost feels like it's easier to get guns, period, right now.
Well, it should be, because I'm telling you right now, we were 2 fucking seconds away from bad shit happening.
Oh yeah, and we're on. It's a slender thread right now. It's a tightrope right now, because one thing the media is not showing people is the media is not doing a great job of showing all the different protests that are happening in major cities. That led to a lot of the opening up of society. But before we get, because I do want to make a point about the masks and grocery stores and things of that nature, but the most telling statistical variance that I've seen in this whole thing to know, are the restrictive measures we're placing on society justified? Are they mitigating this virus? Is Sweden and Norway. They're neighbors. Sweden has about twice the people that Norway has. Norway pretty much immediately locked their society down and followed all the restrictive measures that the World Health Organization said we should. And Sweden basically said, to hell with that. We're going to keep our schools open. We're going to just be smart human beings. We're going to kind of keep our distance. We're not going to put ourselves at risk, but we're not going to restrict our society. Now, as a disclaimer, there are people in Sweden that are unhappy with it, and there are people that kept their kids home anyway. So as with any statistics, there's some variance there.
Yeah.
But the percentages of infected, all right, in Sweden, no lockdown, right next door to Norway, 0.19%. Once again, same percentage of infected people at the time I did this research as Iowa. Norway, 0.14%. It's basically the same number, and when you're dealing with numbers this large.
The only thing tough out of Norway is the Vikings, and they're fucking already gone.
100%. So you got one country locked down, the other country not, and you have very similar infection numbers.
What's
now,
the population?
The number is different in deaths. That's where I did notice when I did my research. Sweden had 0.02% of their population at large, and 12% of the infected that had died.
Okay.
To Norway's 0.003% and 2.6%, of infected. So the numbers of the infected in Sweden, that was a significant jump. I'm not gonna. There's no way to sugarcoat that. A large number more people that were infected in Sweden did die from it.
Do you have the population numbers of Sweden and Norway?
10.2 million is the population of Sweden, and 5.3 million is the population in Norway.
Okay, so do you think? What do you think? Wouldn't, as somebody playing devil's advocate, was that even apples to apples though, with the population difference of half?
I would say that if it was the other way around.
Oh yeah, you got me. Yeah.
Yep. If Norway had a bunch more people, twice as many people as Sweden, but considering that Sweden is the country that's not locked down and they have the largest population, I would say, you could go off of these and feel pretty comfortable. And let's be real. No sane human is going to say 12% of the infected people dying is acceptable.
Yeah.
That's probably an unacceptable number, all right, just from a humanitarian standpoint. But 0.02% of the population at large, I just stand on the side where we cannot make decisions based on 0.02% of the population at large.
Yeah.
And when you think Sweden didn't do any of the restrictive measures and the numbers are that negligible.
And if you cut it in half based on the population.
Right. I just feel like the restrictive measures placed on the population are, one, unconstitutional, and two, I don't believe that they mitigate the spread or the death toll of this particular virus to the point to justify, these types of things. We've got people now, like you asked about grocery stores, for instance. So there are grocery stores in this country right now, right in Fort Collins in Colorado, that are making it mandatory for people to wear masks in order to shop in their store. Okay?
And get high.
Right. And the first day that was made mandatory, a grocery store worker in Fort Collins, Colorado, was shot trying to force a customer to wear a mask.
Yeah.
So now we've got people committing violent acts against each other over these masks, and there is no definitive there's no definitive research that says these masks are actually saving lives. As far as I'm concerned, they save feelings. That's about it.
Yeah.
They let people sleep better at night. But there's also research that says wearing a mask compromises an otherwise healthy immune system. So if I work at a grocery store and my boss tells me it is mandatory for me to wear a mask in order to get paid, in order to make my bills, basically that boss, by that research, is saying you have to compromise your health to safeguard other people's feelings. in my mind, because the mask, the numbers say the masks and the stay-at-home orders, these things are not things are not saving lives. They're not skewing the numbers enough. But we've got this divisive situation in our society where we got the mask wearers and the non-mask wearers, and they hate each other, and we'll fight over it. We'll be violent. We'll shoot each other over something that isn't even based in real research that's definitive. It's crazy to me, Steve, that we're got to that point. But that's where we're at, because we're so uneducated and uninformed that we just listen to people, and then we get super pissed, and we take it personal when somebody not wearing a mask, it doesn't affect you.
No,
The science says it doesn't affect you. I had a guy, again, I work in grocery business. I had a guy get really irate with me, and basically want to almost fist fight over the mask thing, telling me that anybody that comes into a place without a mask on doesn't respect you as a human being and is trying to harm you by getting you sick. And he was ready to fight. He was cussing at me and ready to fight. But when's the last time you sat somewhere and saw somebody get violent over somebody blowing cigarette smoke in their face?
Yeah, unless you're
all the time.
Yep. And unless you're wearing an M50, the medical grade respirator. I mean, your mask ain't doing shit with the COVID-19.
Eyes are the most permeable membrane in the human body. Yeah. And sneezes travel 10 to 40 feet. Watch Mythbusters. You know what I'm saying? Like, this 6 feet thing, it's hilarious. It's not even a real medical. Social distancing isn't a medical term. That's a soccer mom term pushed on social media that we just shamed everybody into using and thinking that this has some, like, basis in medical science. But you're right. Unless you have a full face covering, you are susceptible to getting whatever the hell somebody walking by you has. That's life, Steve.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Life. Nobody wants to see anybody die, but by God, 50,000 people die from suicide in this country a year, many of which are combat vets.
And nobody does a fucking thing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, never got the proper treatment, for actually defending our rights. 600,000 people die from cancer every year, much of which they get from chemicals put in products that the FDA allowed because of, again, corrupt bureaucracy. 600,000, double of what are going to die from coronavirus, but we're not up in arms saying, why the hell is the FDA letting them poison our food and give us cancer? 650,000 people die from heart disease every year. Much of that is obesity contributes heavily to, yet we remain to be one of the few developed countries in the world where it's more expensive to buy produce than it is junk food. And that we don't get up in arms about this, that we just force feed everybody food, and get people sick and they die, and that's not a worry. This coronavirus is supposed to be a worry.
Yeah, and it's pretty fucking simple. We all have the same goals and the same good ideas, but is this shit really working? It don't look like it's fucking working to me.
That's the question, Steve, exactly. Is this shit working? Is what we're doing working? What do the numbers say? And is 0.09% of the American population at large worth making these taking these restrictive measures and taking away liberties? I would just love for any listener to cite for me any other instance in American history where we made decisions for the population at large based on 0.09% of the public.
Yeah. Wyoming had was it in the early 1900s, 1913, when Wyoming had the, don't anybody out there don't listen to me and quote me on this shit, but Wyoming had a huge, what was it, flu or a fever?
Right, so that would have been right around the time of the Spanish flu.
Yeah, that was it. Yep.
Yep. I mean, we've been through these. We've been through all kinds of the Spanish flu, the H1N1, SARS, Ebola. We've been through things that were vastly more devastating from a fatality perspective on the population at large. We never instituted any of these restrictive measures, and we still got through it. That's the sad. We've got to a place in human history where we're not confronted with everyday survival problems, and we're so soft that we we don't think death is normal anymore. We don't think
No,
that
you're
hardship is
absolutely
normal
right.
anymore. We don't really truly understand struggle and have real problems, so we come up with these first world problems,
Yep.
and then somebody like me is termed as like a discompassionate, like I don't care about lives. I absolutely
Yeah.
do. But we cannot make decisions for the population at large in a democratic republic for a tiny percentage of the population at risk. That's all I'm trying to say. Not that I don't care about any of those people, but for instance, I had a bunch of people, I saw them posting, if you think that COVID is not real and we shouldn't do this, choose one to two members of your family that you would like to see dead and repost their
Jeez,
numbers.
that ain't even
right?
that ain't even valid. I mean,
Right. So for starters, you would have to round up heavily in most common American families for one person in their extended family even to die from this. You would have to up the numbers exponentially because the numbers aren't there to say that one person in every family in America would die. But let's say that you had to pick one. My quick, easy answer, me. Next question.
Yep. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the price of life. That's the price of vigilance. That's the price of living, is that you might die from something. And if you're going to try to put me in a corner and think that you've stumped me with this silly question, the easy answer is me. I would die right this second if that's what you're trying to say. I would die for my liberties, and I would die to take these restrictions off society. If that meant that I caught the virus and I ended up passing from it, but everybody saw that we should be living normally and this should not take our liberties away, that's an easy answer for me.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah.
I don't get, like, people act like we're all going to just make it out of here alive, Steve.
How many?
Not the case.
Just off the top of your head, because you know this, how many people have died of this fucking virus so far?
77,881 when I checked earlier this morning.
77,881. I want to bring something to everybody's fucking knowledge bank right now, and I just vetted this so I didn't make a mistake. So if I am wrong, people are welcome to. 2 million Vietnam citizens died in the Vietnamese War. 1.1 million North Vietnamese soldiers died. 250,000 South Vietnamese died. And 58,000 American fucking soldiers died in the Vietnam War for absolutely motherfucking nothing. So,
Yep.
77,000 is worldwide. 77,881. God forbid anybody listening.
That number's for United States.
Okay, United States. What's worldwide? That's what I want to know.
Worldwide, I would have to call that one up. I don't have it called up on my tab. I know just not too long ago that it was up over 250,000. Now,
It's not
I
even
want
a
to make
number.
a point. I want to make a point, though. I mean, we have 7 billion people on the planet.
Yeah,
so
I know.
it's
it's not even a
to
number.
us, but right. The point that really needs to be made, though, because I kind of track social media to have my finger on the pulse, see what people are thinking.
Yeah.
And at first, everybody was basically scared. And then slowly but surely, people started posting the numbers. They started posting the percentages and asking, like, am I stupid, or is this really only 0.03% of our population that is dying from this?
Yeah.
About 3 days after that, I started seeing more and more people posting these curiosity questions. All of a sudden, we started finding out about they're putting the COVID on as a contributing factor to death, and the death toll numbers started to dramatically rise. All right, so one of those days that we were still under 10,000 deaths in America at that point in time when I was tracking this.
Yeah.
And there's a New York Times article, and it says deaths surge to over 10,000 as new death certificates, made or whatever. I read the article. They're saying this is, we're up over 10,000 deaths because they started basically changing death certificates. So on the same day, I go to the CDC website, and the CDC website says that only 9,900 people in all of America had died. All right, but the New York Times is publishing articles saying that New York State has more than 10,000. which is more than the CDC says has died in America. So you see, we start having these varying numbers. And then at the time I did the research, because we planned on trying to get this on a couple weeks ago, as you know, and you and I have been trying to hook up since, I calculated it out to 182,000 deaths for over a year. That was the highest off of the numbers I had to work for. Today, when I did the math, it's up to over 300,000. So in the last 2 weeks, supposedly we've had an exponential climb in the death rate percentages from COVID. But in those same 2 weeks, we've had, everybody under the sun saying, yeah, we're just changing death certificates because we get more funding if COVID's listed on the death certificate. Yep. So, even using the inflated numbers, which they're admittedly inflating, we're talking minuscule percentages of, 0.09% of the population at large. Is that enough percent to justify massive restrictive measures across our entire country? And that's the main question to anybody listening to this. Not, is this real? Not, is it a conspiracy? Not, is it worse than the flu? I don't give a shit.
Yep.
Is 0.09% of the population at large worth the restrictive measures placed on the American people during this made-up hysteria by the mass media and entertainment?
And with that being said, I do want to stress that, if anybody listening has had anybody die of this, I mean, we do know it's real, and we do know it's a bad deal, and we do feel sorry, and I hope it don't happen to my family. I hope it don't happen to anybody's family, but it's going to. I'm kind of like Andy, when he said the other day at the place that it just is what it is, and now we got Big R on the tube here, and he would take a bullet if he had. I mean, I would be if somebody was going to throw out the question, who in your family? I mean, that's a stupid fucking question, but who would not answer me?
Right.
It just don't make no sense. So that's the question. The question ain't, is it real? Is it bad? Is it this or is it that? Is it I guess, are we getting the real story from who we're supposed to be getting it for? That's the question.
And that's the deeper question. That's worth, maybe us having more conversations about this in the future. And like I talked to you before getting on here, the main thing I want people to focus on is what is worth your liberty? What is worth restrictive measures? And like you just said, it's not that I don't care about, an individual dying. God, I would not want to see any of my family members be on a ventilator. A terrible situation. But I can say from a Democratic Republic perspective, we have to think as a population at whole, and we just can't make decisions, and obviously it's my opinion, based on tiny percentages of the population. We have to make decisions based on the population at large. And when economists are saying now that more people will go bankrupt, far more people will go bankrupt from this sheltering in place than will ever die from the coronavirus.
Yep.
You got to start making hard decisions.
Yeah,
because bankruptcy will kill people just as quick. Where do you think some of those suicide statistics come from? Financial hardship, no way out. So you can't think just what's the threat right in front of my face. We got to think what's the threat to the vast population at large and how to mitigate those threats. And yes, how to mitigate threats of illnesses that are going to affect a tiny percentage of the population or whatever. But we can't make large societal decisions, in my opinion, and that's what I want you guys to ask yourself. What percentage is worth making those decisions? Now, the conversation Steve talked about, that's a bigger conversation, and it needs to be had by the American people, which is, are we getting the truth?
Yeah.
If we're not, why are we not? Who's giving us this information? Ask those questions. Go look up who owns Fox, who owns MSNBC. Try to find out, which subsidiary do they own that owns another network?
Yeah.
Find out how much of the narrative is getting fed to you by a group of 5 or 6 rich people that have nothing in common with you as a common American citizen, and we're allowing them to shape our view of what it is to be an American and to shape our view of the narrative in America. So that's a whole nother conversation that
Yeah.
would be a blast as well. But I definitely wanted to focus on, what's worth our liberties.
Heck
You need
yeah.
to start asking yourselves that question.
Yeah. Well, Big R, I appreciate you being on, man. It's been a good podcast, and I want everybody to, understand at home that if you do vet some of the stuff we've talked about, and you feel like we're wrong or you feel like we're right, no matter what platform you're listening to, go rate the podcast, go leave comments, let us know what you think. More importantly, take some of the information you learned today and ask them questions to yourself, because, as an American, we're allowed to do that shit, and we're allowed to find out the answers if we don't have them. It's not as simple as getting on Facebook and listening to some jack off like myself spew a bunch of bullshit. You're responsible to take what you learned today and ask questions. You're responsible to vet if you feel necessary. It's your responsibility. We're big fucking supposedly free American people. Big R, thanks for being on, brother. I appreciate it.
Hey, Steve, I really appreciate you having me on here. And I don't speak for Steve, but I do want to say I don't have many answers for people, and I'm not looking to give any answers to people. What I want to give to people is curiosity and a skill set that they can get to the bottom of it for themselves. So, I mean, if you have any questions about this information, or just simply like, how do I find viable research? How do I find reliable sites? How do I go about research? That's what I went to school for. Drop along to Steve. Steve, get a hold of me. I'm willing to try to help educate people,
Yeah.
and so that we can be free thinkers. But I got no answers for you people other than just giving you the numbers. I gave you some opinions. I want you to think. I want you to be vigilant, because freedom requires vigilance, and it's one of the requirements of being an American that we've just forgot. So please be a vigilant American and educate yourself.
Yeah, and all you guys got to do is go to dogsoldierarmory.com or coyotecalls.com, click on the Contact Us page, send me an email, and I'll get you in the right direction. Because that's one thing we can do as Americans. We can agree on one thing. This is America. We love our country, and we want it to be great, and we want it to be awesome, and we want to be free, because that's what we're supposed to be. And there's a lot to learn out there, and there's a lot of questions to be asked, and there's answers to be found. With that being said, guys, keep your head up, move forward, stay fearless, apologize to no one, and if you truly believe in shit, it's worth fighting for. I promise you that. And once again, thank a veteran, because without veterans, none of this shit's possible. Peace out, guys.